can't mention everything, but something that comes close to home is the tragedy that happened in the church in Texas. And so many people identify with that. We just sang a song about being set free from our fear. And somehow we need to operate in that we don't operate out of fear. I don't know that we know how to do that. I heard one guy say that those who are brave are really just acting out of fear. And that fear is always an element of bravery in some way. So I don't know that we can be rid of fear completely. But the idea that we would panic is not good. We don't necessarily function well during panic. So we need to be wise. We need to be intentional. We need to be deliberate. So we trust God to lead us in those things that we need to be led in and not operate out of fear. In light of that, the sheriff is doing a safety class, a church safety class on Tuesday night at Temple Baptist Church, and some of our folks are going. And if you want to go and be part of that team, you can. Dale, Steve, you're going, right? Dale, I don't see Dale. He must have stepped out, but Steve's going. So if you want to coordinate with Steve about the times and all that, you can do that. So anybody who wants to participate in that can. I'll be at work, so I will not be attending, but there's already at least a handful of you who are going to go. And that's just a matter of being prepared, knowing what to do in a situation. If a situation happens, then how do you respond to that? So, there you go. In the meantime, have no fear. Trust God. Trust that God is very capable of keeping us in and out of troubles. Very capable of keeping us. I very much would love to tell you that as a Christian, you won't suffer. But I'd be lying to you if I did. As a matter of fact, it seems the opposite. It seems that it's guaranteed Christians are going to suffer in this world. It cannot be avoided. The difference for Christians and those who are not is that God is present with you and within you, no matter what you're going through. And that is a big difference. And it is true that God does deliver His people from many, many things. But He has not guaranteed that we would be immune to the troubles, the pressures, the difficulties of the world. Suffering is a normal part of Christian life. And so in troubles and difficulties in those things, there's just something that I want to remind you about in that. And to always remember whose you are. Whose you are. In my ponderings lately, to some that might just seem like ramblings, and maybe it is, but in studying out further about the church and what God intends for His church, it seems to me that He continually wants to impart into us revelation, knowledge, that gives us what we need for the generation that we live in. Christians don't live naively in the world. We live with wisdom and understanding. imparted to us spiritually. So the world doesn't sneak up on us. Troubles and problems don't sneak up on us. And we've talked to you a lot in the past here at New Life about your identity, about who you are. Yeah, I know for years we've been doing that, and we're going to continue to do that. But I believe, and I mentioned this last Sunday, the things I mentioned to you last Sunday, you're going to be hearing about from months now. So just get used to that, I guess, because those things God has packed into me that need to come out. But something that's as important and maybe more important as who you are is whose you are. Even if you don't know who you are, if you know who you belong to, there's power in that. And I'm going to tell you that being in this world, belonging to God, goes a long way, because God's going to take care of His own. Let us be careful about coming to judgment about what happens to those who are His that seems like He's not taking care of them. Let us be careful about that. God is very capable of taking care of those who are His, and He always does, whether it seems to us like He does or not. And I referenced that idea that Darren mentioned that, could God not have stopped Apostle Paul from killing Christians? Obviously, he stopped him on the Damascus Road, dead in his tracks with a light shining from heaven, and Paul was laying on the ground as if dead on the ground. Could God not have done that a week before, a month before, a year before, or whatever? Absolutely. So do we conclude that God was not merciful to those Christians that Paul killed? Or do we conclude that God is a wise God and a loving God, and He knows exactly what He's doing, and He's always merciful and He's always on time? We have to decide in our hearts what we're going to believe about our God. And we should always remember whose we are. Who do you belong to? Now, this is not even part of my sermon. This is just where I'm at, okay? I better see what time it is. That might matter to some of y'all. Whose you are is so important. Whose you are. Who do you belong to? I'm really thinking that answering that question would solve a lot of your problems. Who do you belong to? Now, the number one problem with that is that most of us think we belong to ourselves. I'm my own. I do whatever I want to do. I'm grown. I'm 21. I do what I want to do. Some of y'all remember that? You remember that? We got to be, I remember it was the stages, boy, if I can just get to be 16, that'd be awesome, man. You get to 16, you get your license. Well, it didn't quite satisfy you. So what do you want now? Well, now I want to be 18, and then you want to be 21, and what's after that? Come on, Social Security. Is that the next big thing to look to? I'm 61. I've almost arrived. I remember thinking, if I can just be 21 years old, I can do whatever I want to do. But I'm going to tell you, that's a lie. If you're believing that, that's a total lie. You can't do whatever you want to do. You can try to do whatever you want to do, but very seldom do we ever really get to do what we want to do. It always backfires. And I'm going to tell you that if you're holding on to possession of yourself, it's not going to work out good for you. That's going to blow up in your face. There's no such thing as being non-possessed. Somebody has rights over you besides you. And if not God, then sin. Sin has rights over you. Evil in some way has manipulated humanity to have rights over humanity until or unless you are redeemed by Jesus Christ. And that's just the facts of life. That's just the way it is. So it seems as we go about our merry way in our merry lives in this merry little world, it seems that we're doing what we want to do, and the whole time we're being set up to the end of destruction that's coming. It's all a deception. It's a facade. It's a lie. And so working out who possesses you is important in your life. Who are you going to belong to? And the only safe place, the only safe person is God. Nobody else will care for you like God. Nobody. No other human being, not yourself, certainly not the enemy. Nobody will show you the care and concern, the compassion, the mercy that God will and does. And so it would be to your great advantage to give over possession to Him right now. If you've never did that, it'd be good to do. Now, some people might think I'm leading you into salvation or leading you into something. No, I'm just saying that you need to decide who you want to own you. That's what I'm saying. Because somebody does. Somebody owns you. And Jesus went to the cross and paid the price. It's right there. There's a picture of it. He went to the cross and paid the price to buy you back so that He could own you, so that you could be freed to do what you want to do. That's a pretty good deal. But if you don't do what you want to do that's good for you, I tell people, you can go do what you want to do, but it won't last long. That always puts you back in bondage, just doing whatever you want to do. It puts you back in bondage again. So if at the bottom of your heart you can come to the conclusion to give yourself to God, if that's what you want to do, Jesus has set you free for you to make the decision of who you want to belong to. And I think that's a more accurate way to say what the gospel is. It really is. Who do you want to belong to? Who do you want to own you? Because I'm telling you that sin and shame and guilt and condemnation and the devil or whatever, evil, whatever, is a rough taskmaster, cruel in every way, brutal in every way. It's appealing at first. There's kind of a glamour to certain things, but once you get through that crust, it's corrupt to the core. Now, some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. Others of you may be wondering what I'm talking about. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then please talk to somebody who does. Because those of us who've been there, done that, and got to the core of that corruption and saw what that's about, we are so glad that Jesus paid the price to set us free, to save our lives, for us to give ourselves to God. I understand that it's hard for us to think about God being good in the terms of Him owning us. I know that that's a mental challenge for us. And it is an absolute reality and fact that we do become His children when we're born again. So, it's not really like He owns us like we're slaves. That is not the correct analogy. But those of you who have young children, I mean, don't you pretty much own them? Right? I mean, they're yours, right? You brought them into this world, and by God, you'll take them out. Right? Is that the way that goes? Did I say that out loud? I said that out loud. I mean, and you understand that analogy that for children, younger children, you own them because, why? Because you love them, because you care for them, you provide for them. That's the analogy of God owns us, is that we're like little children to Him. We're not capable of taking care of ourselves, and He owns us in a way to look out for us and care for us. And I'm going to tell you, that's a good ownership. I mean, if you didn't own your little children, I mean, they'd be on their own, would they not? Just be wandering about? What would they do? Where would they go? Excuse me. How would they survive? But because you have a sense of ownership, nobody can come take them from you legally, rightfully. They're yours. You own them. They're yours. Nobody can put a claim on that. And you have a say-so of what's going to happen to them, what should happen to them, the way that they ought to grow up. You have control over them for them to go the way you want them to go. And that is the analogy of God owning us, is that we give ourselves to Him as children so that He will care for us the way we need to be cared for. So you need to settle that issue in your life. If you've not, you need to settle that. I promise you, you're not just floating through the cosmos on your own doing what you want to do. You are not. You are either being manipulated by a system of evil that is much more cunning than you are, or you belong to God. So what's it going to be? I don't know. Maybe there's a better way to give forth this truth that I'm giving you. I don't know. Somebody got a scripture, or somebody have a thought to support. Somebody have a thought to support what I'm saying or to encourage others.
So when he was talking about freedom and talking about how Christ has set us free, you know, when sometimes when you think you are somebody's or God possesses you, He's your father. He's, you know, just like a father is with a child, that you don't have a freedom, you know. But Galatians 5 verse 1, I've talked with AJ a million times about this verse, but it says, "For freedom Christ has set us free." Verse 16 it says, "Here's my instruction: walk in the Spirit, and let the Spirit bring order to your life. If you do, you will never give in to your selfish and sinful cravings." And so,
excellent.
There you go.
Excellent. Walk in the Spirit, and you will not give in to your selfish ambitions. Somebody else? I mean, this is such a serious issue. I don't know what to do with it. And by the way, I know I look down once in a while, and I do have a few notes, but it has none of anything I've said on it. I've got Abraham, our father, an example, at the top of that. You know, Father God, Father, to me this issue seems, I don't know, there seems to be some great significance to it for today. And I don't know what that means. We don't want to pass by something that you are doing or saying. So we take this pause for this moment to listen to you. What are you saying? What are you saying about whose we are? What are you saying about how we surrender ourselves to you? How do we give possession to you? And is there something you want to say to us as a group or individually about that? So we're pausing to ask you to speak to us. So once again, I'm asking if anybody out there has a word to say to all of us about this. 1 Corinthians 6:20. We are not our own, but we're bought with a price. So y'all get that. That's Jesus bought us with a price. Are you afraid to be owned? Is that a fearful thing for you? I'm asking for you to respond back to me. Is that a fearful thing? Do you fear being owned? I mean, how does that feel to you to say that God owns you? Is that fearful? How does that make you feel? How does that make you feel to think that you're owned by somebody? And of course, we're saying God. Protected? Pardon? Secure? Loved? Strengthened? So these are all people that are owned, that are saying they like it. Is that what you're saying? You like it. So you know you're owned, right? You know you belong to God. Those of you who are speaking and other, you know you belong to God. You're His. Y'all know that? He told you that. We did what once? Auditorily told you that I own you, young lady. You've always been mine. So this is one huge aspect of the gospel that maybe people don't. I don't know. Do you think people in general, let me back that up. Do you think people who don't know God, do they have any idea about being owned by God? Do you think they think that, or do they understand that? They don't? So a bondservant, Dave is saying, is somebody who voluntarily puts himself into service. Right? Is that what you're saying? So those of you who said you're owned and you love it, did you all voluntarily give yourself to God? Oh, not really. Okay. Over here's a not really, but some of the rest of you said yes. So let's hear how you said yes. So let's hear how you. Okay. All right. Before you knew Him. But once you knew Him, did at some point you did voluntarily give yourself, but you didn't wake up one bright morning and say, well, I think I'm going to give myself to God today. No, that didn't happen. So what Gary's saying is critical, because nobody knows God without He first reveals Himself to you. So nobody can just figure out that I want God or whatever. So just to re-clarify that again, Gary, was that a process for you of coming to understand about giving yourself to God? Was there any hesitation in giving yourself to Him? Anybody else? Once you saw who God was, the rest of you who answered, was there hesitation in giving yourself to Him? No. It's something you couldn't wait to do. You see, that's the gospel. The gospel is that God is so good. When you know Him, you're going to run to Him as fast as you can. People who are running from God, away from God, is people that don't know Him. They have no revelation of Him. They have no knowledge of Him. Wow. So, therein is, now there's an epiphany, right? Hopefully, some of you are having an epiphany. Everybody needs a revelation of God. Everybody needs a revelation of who God is. Because you will never give yourself to Him if you don't know who He is. So I want to pray for everybody here. I would like to put my hands on you and pray for you. I want to do that. Does some of you want to lay your hands on some people? I love doing that. Do some of you, do y'all think that there's a power and touch in prayer? I think there's a tremendous power of impartation. I don't know that I can explain it or understand it, but I believe that it's absolutely true that there's spiritual impartation, that when we pray for one another, that touch can be truly, truly impactful in someone's life. Now, obviously, prayer works without touch, and it works in long distances, obviously. It's not bound to that. But sometimes there's an impartation that I think only comes through touch. So, wow, now I don't know exactly what that looks like. You guys want to play something? Yeah? Music team?